Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Ultra in Conversation. Today, I am conversing with the enigmatic baggage of baggage claim. Hello, baggage, and a warm welcome to you.
Hi, HG. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Good to have you here with me for a conversation. Now, first question I must ask you is with this interesting name of baggage claim, presumably aimlessly ambling along on the baggage carousel of life. So, what's behind this name?
When I was creating the channel, I was asking some friends for some suggestions because I wanted to keep it an anonymous channel.
Hmm.
I wasn't ready to share my name, and I guess I still am not. And my friend had the suggestion because she suggested, how about baggage claim? And it just clicked immediately because I did feel like the channel was, as much as it's about talking to other people, it was about me trying to resolve some emotional baggage that I have. And I'm very much of the belief that the best way to take life on is to take as much responsibility for yourself. So that visual of going up to a carousel and claiming your emotional baggage, so to speak, and then going through the painstaking process of unpacking it and unifying yourself as much as possible, that just was very attractive to me. And the channel very much has been that process for me. I've been making content for about 4 years, and I do feel like the work itself has forced me to grow very rapidly as much as possible. And I'm sure there's still a long road ahead, but that's been the crux of the name.
Makes perfect sense. Thank you for explaining that. Now, you mentioned responsibility, and that's something that you're probably aware that narcissists don't take responsibility for their behavior, something I regularly talk about on my channel. And we, of course, both speak about an individual who demonstrates a complete absence of responsibility, and that's this one's wife. Now, you've created quite a number of videos about Harry and this one's wife. You're based in the United States. What has prompted your interest in them?
So I forget what video it was. It might have been an According to Taz video that I first came across, where it was an analysis of Meghan Markle,
Hmm.
and it it forced me to reckon with that idea that what exactly is a narcissist, because I had never really delved into that. It's a term that I think just gets tossed around way too commonly.
Hmm.
And when she touched on that subject, I then came across actually your content, and you've offered just such a deep dive into the subject, which is a great. I think it's great value, and that deep dive helped me understand the dynamics of a relationship that I had been engaged in. At that point, it had already been 4 years since that relationship had ended, but it helped me do this autopsy after the fact to
Hmm.
understand what had actually happened. And so Megan has become this fixation, so to speak, to help me dissect that sort of behavior now wherever I have seen it. So it in making those videos, it ended up being therapy for myself, even though, I suffered at the hands of a male narcissist, but someone very close in my family is a female narcissist. So I see that behavior all the time. And I think being able to identify it and understand it gives me that little amount of distance where I don't get sucked into those things as I used to.
Hmm.
So that's really been the true benefit of understanding the narcissist. And I felt as if your between your content, my content, if people can understand them for themselves, they can either heal from a past relationship or try as with all their might to avoid it in the future. But also, most importantly, avoid those pitfalls themselves, because I do think our culture is tilted very much towards narcissism thanks to social media and a lot of other things. But there is this lure, especially for women, that come be a narcissist, be obsessed with your looks, get as many fillers as possible, constantly obsessed with staying young, looking young. That there's this push to convince women that there's great value in them bringing their body to the world. That dance provocatively, undress yourself, have an OnlyFans. There's this whole obsession with the body, with the face that is being pushed on our culture. And I think seeing that there needs to be some come to Jesus moment to help people fight that tide.
Interesting. Now, in relation to the personal impact that it's had on you, it's interesting that you talk about the way that your videos about this one's wife are used as almost a form of therapy, as you mentioned. I certainly endorse your sentiments with regard to the utilization of her to reach people so that they can then understand. I've had numerous people contact me saying, I had no idea, HG, about narcissism until I started watching your videos about his wife, and then the light bulb.
Yes.
I realized it was my family, all right, had a relationship. And that's the primary purpose of the creation of those videos, is to use famous and infamous people so that people are more likely to engage and then go, oh, hang on a minute, I recognize this behavior. So it's good to hear that you have a similar approach to that.
Absolutely.
In relation to your own personal experience, you just explained and touched on the fact that you had involvement with 2 narcissists. Would you tell me a little bit about your experience of those narcissists and how it impacted on you?
Sure. So I'll stay away from specifically in the family because I don't want to touch on that, and I always feel like I always feel guilty for embarrassing any family members. But what my early experience of a narcissist ended up making me a prime suspect, prime fixation for a narcissist. And I myself was, throughout my whole dating history, seesawing between 2 extremes, one being a narcissist and the other being just the most useless sort of benign type of man, because I would feel so burned by the narcissistic relationship. And at every sort of rung of that experience, the narcissist type kept getting worse and worse. So in these initial stages, the men were not necessarily outright having personality disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, but they had very high narcissistic tendencies. And it just kept getting worse. And I reached a point where I got so sick of the benign types that I stopped dating the nice guys completely. And I was just getting stuck on narcissist after narcissist until I came to the biggest challenge of my life. And I do feel like the universe, it puts in front of you obstacles to try to teach you lessons. And the more you are stubborn about learning those lessons, the more the universe will make the next challenge harder on you and harder on you until you finally hit rock bottom and learn. And in this case, I came across this man, and he went through the full stages. Even though the relationship was not very long, it was about 2 months, he went through the full stages very quickly. I became convinced that this is the perfect man I have ever met. This is what true love must be. Where,
yes,
yes, that stumbling feeling that you've fallen into someone's arms, and he did a lot of he did and said a lot of the perfect things very, very quickly. And I had my guard up, but it became harder and harder because the connection felt so strong that it made it really hard for me to see straight in that whole process. And I think I'm misremembering the facts. I think it was a little longer. I think it was closer to 4 months now that I'm thinking back to it. It's been some time now. And
yes.
And he there was the odd situation with that was that while I was spending time with him, there kept popping up this woman on the side. He said they're good friends. He just kept telling me, oh, they're good friends. But this girl would come around and just try to be best friends with me. She was the type that she would just show up. She's like, she would call me, sweet names. Oh, you look so beautiful. Oh, you're so cute. You're just the kindest person. You're the funniest person I met. So it was she was sort of doing a lot of the things that he was doing too, which is like he was really building me up, and so was she, strangely. And she just said, "Oh, they're good friends, they're old friends. There's nothing going on, nothing like that." But it became this process where she started showing up to events. My friends, if there were, just people grabbing drinks, she would come to that, and I was inviting her to things. I didn't think that there was anything nefarious about her. And then she started knowing a little too much about me. So if I had a date with the guy, with the narcissist, she's like, "Oh, you have a date with him, right? Why don't you come meet up with me beforehand, and then I'll drop you off at the date." And so she's like, "Oh, I'll actually be swinging by your apartment. So I'll pick you up. We'll grab a drink, and then I'll drop you off at the restaurant where you're meeting him." And I was like, and again, now that I think back to it, I would find that very odd. But I just thought she's a pal. And so what ended up actually becoming really obvious was that they actually had a relationship. She was in love with him. She didn't know how to keep him. So what she was doing was she was being sort of a bimbo wrangler for him. And I know I'm calling myself a bimbo in that scenario, but that was essentially what she was doing. So she was playing sort of a game with him as well, where she had internalized all of his tactics and was using them on me to triangulate me. And then so she would pick me up and drop me off at his place. She was essentially like bringing me to wherever he was. And I got suddenly, I realized that something is really screwy here, because when he very quickly switched from "I'm in love with you, you're the greatest person I've ever met," to suddenly now he started devaluing me, where he was not picking up calls.
Yes.
He was not, he was not responsive. He would make some very, strange comments at me. And then when I would point out that something felt odd, he would say, "Well, I'm not here to build you up. I'm not here to coddle you. I'm here to make you a better version of yourself." And he would say that a lot. And I started to get a little screwy, to be honest. I lost a sense of myself. And there was a lot of magic he was working, where a friend of mine he met up with lunch. It was like, she wasn't a very close friend, but he met up with her and he said, "Oh, she was flirting with me the whole time." And I found that a little weird that she would do that. I didn't know her well enough, so I just stopped talking to her. I was like, "Well, that's pretty inappropriate of her. She knows I'm dating you, so she shouldn't be doing that." Then through his lieutenant, which is a term I learned because of you, and I think you would agree that that's an apt application. So she would go and make even better friends with all of my friends. And then they would set up plans together without me, to the point that there was a night where it was the narcissist, the lieutenant, and my best friend, my roommate, and they were all hanging out, and I was not invited, and the narcissist hadn't messaged me for weeks. And he started saying like, "Oh, maybe I'm kind of interested in your roommate." And so he was like stirring all this anxiety, and I was starting to feel very jealous and just really off put. And I suddenly got to a point where something felt so odd that I told all of my friends, stop talking to both of them. Okay. Because I realized their fingers had reached so deep into my life. And in that very short period, things had turned really upside down. I did not feel like myself. I didn't think like myself. I was ready to break friendships. I was ready to break with my parents. I mean, it was insane how quickly I felt like I had been corrupted. And I'm not saying that I don't have any responsibility in that. I was a perfect person to go after, because I'm a people pleaser. I have no boundaries. Like that is quintessentially me. I have fixed a lot of those things since, but that's what he was doing. And he was using this girl who could just come as this siren, however, just as girl to girl, you trust on another girl, you don't have your hackles up. And she was coming and causing so much damage by doing his bidding. So she would reach out to my friends for his sake. And so I asked my friends, I said, please. And what he didn't realize is that I actually have very strong old friendships. They were none of the friends that he was trying to mess with were, were friends for fewer than 10 years. They were all long-standing friendships. So we've seen our ups and downs. We know things will pass. So when I told those friends, cut it off, they all agreed. They said, okay, whatever you say, that's totally fine by us. And then he got locked out. And one of the things he said to me when I just said, okay, clearly something's wrong here. He came clean that he was dating that lieutenant. I said, I'm out of this. This is way too complicated for my taste. And he said, the last thing he said to me was, I'm not done with you. I will never be done with you. I will love you forever. And I was just like, It was like half a threat, half a declaration of love. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that so odd. And the part that was yearning for him felt that was very romantic. And I realized that I had such a problem that I had attracted this type of man into my life. Again, I didn't understand the full depth of it at that time. So I made the decision that this had to be the last bad person that I have dated. And I took a 2-year break of no dating, nothing. I just took it for indefinitely. It ended up being for two years, but that was for the first time that I was not caught up with a crush on someone or, having unrequited love feelings for anybody. It was for the first time that I just had emptiness in my brain. I was just focused on whatever was in front of me. And in that period, I came across a couple of men that fit that same profile that would have been my new fixation in my desire to be with the next narcissist. So I could see, I got that distance where I could see the negative side of me still working in this pattern. And then it was in that time that 2 years in that I ended up meeting my now husband.
Okay.
And he is not a narcissist. We've been together for 6 years, married for 2 years. But for the first couple of years, I kept waking up in the middle of the night with the immediate thought was, he's going to tell you who he really is. He's going to show it to you. This is the day he shows it to you. Because I just didn't trust that I had actually overcome this thing. And he's so, he wasn't the other side of it either. He's not benign either. He's actually what I would say is a very tough man. He's a principled man, but he's tough when he needs to be, soft when he needs to be. But I just couldn't trust it for a really long time. And I know the story is a little long, but this is where it actually gets really interesting. When I started dating him, the narcissist lieutenant, those two people, by the way, were now in a long-term relationship. And whatever funny business they were doing on the side is their business. But the lieutenant reached out to me and she said, hey, I really miss you, which was the type of language she would use a lot. She would say, I love you, I miss you, which I felt was too flowery language for a female friendship, but that's how she was. She said, I really miss you. I wish we could go back to how things used to be. And I said, of course, I'm happy to go back to a friendship. How are you? X, Y, and Z. And she ended up giving me a phone call and we caught up a little bit. And I said, oh, I'm dating this man. He's a really sweet man. And a few days later, she sends me a text just checking in. She says, how are you? We were just talking about you in bed this morning. Again, very odd thing to say to a friend. And she said, we were just talking about you today and thinking of you. We both miss you. How's the boy? And the thing is, there's this thing of calling men boys within girls. Like girls do that a lot. And I do that with my girlfriends too sometimes. I used to when I was younger, but it is a little derogatory. And so jokingly, I corrected her. I said, he's doing well. He's not a boy anymore. He's strong like bull. He's a man now, or some joke like that. And she responded with, the thing is, and I'm just setting the boundary, right? I'm telling you, don't call my boyfriend a boy, right? She responds with, just a smiling, laughing emoji. Oh, is he over 35 and owns a house? Smiley face. He's still a boy. And suddenly I think that was the moment that I actually had my proper wake up. Everything else was still kind of hazy. I didn't quite understand what I was dealing with. That's when I suddenly realized, and that's the thing, is that I'm such a pushover that I accept bad treatment of myself all the time. That is very quintessential to me. But when someone's treating someone I love badly, that's when I can see the truth. And that's what happened there, where I realized that the whole reason she was excited to reconnect with me was so that she and that narcissist could find a way to, finagle their way back into my life and have a kind of control over my husband, now husband, then boyfriend. And that man really got off on that. And that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to establish through this lieutenant that this hierarchy, that at the end of the day, any man that I'm with after him is still a boy, and that I should remember that. And people might argue that I'm reading too much into it. There's obviously a lot of other detail that I've left out. And since then, here's what's interesting. Listening to your content, I have tested this theory. I have not said a word to this man for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And no, longer, 7 years. But every couple of months, he has reached out to me. For 7 years, I've not said anything. And he has still reached out to me. Because
May
he
I
doesn't.
ask you why
Oh, sorry.
you haven't? May I ask you why you haven't put in place the means to prevent him from doing that?
I did for a while, where I just blocked it.
Mm-hmm.
I blocked him. And then he reached out to me through other channels. So he reached out via email. Then he reached out via this girl's phone number. And then I blocked her too. And I just didn't respond to the email. Then he reached out to me on LinkedIn. So it's been through these various channels.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never responded to anything. And I was just curious. I was just curious that if I left anything unblocked, would he still find a way to reach out to me? And he has always found some way to do it.
Essentially, if you maintain an electronic corridor between you and the narcissist, you will be hoovered. I often call it no contact suicide, because it's so easy. As I regularly explain to people, the narcissist needs to pursue the prime aims in their interaction with another person. So that's the need for control, usually to gain fuel, possibly to gain character traits and residual benefits. That's what drives the interaction between a narcissist and another human being. Always. It's always about the prime aim. Accordingly, in furtherance of the pursuit of their prime aims, the narcissism looks for a way to achieve them, and to do so with the minimum of fuss, effort, application of time, energy, money, etc. So in the same way, if you needed a pint of milk, you'd go to your local convenience store because it's nearby. You would not drive to your local airport, get in a plane and fly to the United Kingdom, get a taxi to Waitrose in the UK, buy your milk and do the journey in reverse, because that would be preposterous. The narcissism is similar. So if you leave it so the narcissist can ring you up, at some point the narcissist will text you or ring you, because it's easy for the narcissism to use that route to get to you for the purposes of asserting control and drawing fuel. But if the narcissist can't ring you, can't text you, can't email you, can't go through social media channels, they may try those channels, but they're all blocked off, so you don't hear from the narcissist. Because what's clear, and thank you very much for sharing your personal experience there, Baggage, and that you've moved on in terms of you're married to somebody who's not a narcissist, so that's all good for you. But it's what is evident from your explanation, both in terms of the level of detail that you've gone into, which is entirely typical of the victim of a narcissist, but also the discernible emotion that's still there when you recount this tale, demonstrates the impact that it's had upon you. And I'd advocate that you implement a total no contact regime with regard to this narcissist that you had an involvement with, because if there are those electronic routes, from time to time he'll come back and have a nibble. Not necessarily, it's not upsetting you in the way that it might once did.
Hmm.
But in order to jettison him completely, you need to put in place that total no contact regime, and otherwise he will keep coming back, because he subconsciously thinks you are his property.
Hmm. Yes. Yes,
So I
that is.
encourage you to, please go ahead.
Yes, I agree, and I'll make sure everything is locked up. I think that's a good suggestion. Yes.
Good.
And that is very.
Make sure that.
I'm so sorry. There's a slight lag. I don't mean to talk over you, please.
No, that's all right. So you had your wake-up moment in relation to recognizing that something wasn't altogether right about this individual and the behaviors, which was in tandem with the lieutenant as well. And I'm pleased to hear the extent to which my work has helped you. Now, with this one's wife, we'll go to her.
Mm-hmm.
When did you identify there was something not quite right about her behavior? When did you think, I'm not liking what I'm seeing here? What was it?
I think it was reading Lady Colin Campbell's book, because before then there were nibbles of it, seeing some of the behavior during engagements, which I didn't do a deep dive into all of the royal engagements she had partaken in until much later. But initially, when you saw the Fab Four and the difference between the dynamic between William and Catherine versus Harry and the woman, this one's wife, there was some feeling of it. It felt like the tiniest hint somewhere in my heart, but I couldn't pinpoint it exactly. And so when I read Lady Colin Campbell's book, and she specified information that she had gathered, and I was still not quite convinced until I heard the story about her going around and announcing the Archie pregnancy at Eugenie's wedding. I always feel like that piece of information, how someone perceives that piece of information, is very telling. It's one thing if you say, listen, we don't know if that really is factual, then that's fine. I can respect that. But if someone says to me that Meghan Markle was entitled to do that, she had every right to do that, then I know that Meghan Markle is almost the reason she gets lauded up so much by the Sussex squad is because she is as selfish and self-serving as those people want to be in their lives and want to feel justified in their lives. Because if you don't know why it's wrong to go around at another woman's wedding and make it all about you, which she did with the headlines, she left that coat button undone, which was completely unnecessary. It was way too early to tell anybody. But that's what helped me actually see why she was just such an awful person, because that aspect of her narcissism we're just seeing publicly. What the hell is happening behind the scenes? We don't even know. So that was really a big turning point for me.
Okay. And in the coverage that you have of her, naturally you've made a number of videos about this one's wife and her behaviors and Harry, etc. In your view, what particular strand of, or topic is one that people are most particularly interested in relation to her?
The piece I hear a lot, the question I hear a lot is, why hasn't Harry woken up?
Okay.
I hear that a lot. And people think that he doesn't have information. People think he's not smart. People think that he himself is a narcissist, which I don't think so. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. But to me, a narcissist being with a narcissist just doesn't make sense. But a narcissist bringing out narcissistic traits in a person, that makes sense to me. But I've made a video about this that's actually coming out in a couple of hours. But it's, to me, when someone makes a mistake, as catastrophic one as Prince Harry has, that he abandoned his family, he abandoned his country, his work, his friends, his identity. He left everything, and massively his reputation. He doesn't know how to be wrong after doing all of that, because that is a very difficult thing to do, is recognition of your own mistake. Because I think he's tempted to. I think he can see in all the ways that Megan has been a poor decision for him. And his family keeps the door open, which is very kind of them to do that. I don't think he deserves that necessarily after the way he has behaved. But I think the idea of humbling himself and going up to William, going up to the king and saying, I am really sorry about what I did. And I'm sorry that everything that I did led to my grandparents going to their grave in a far more hardship than they deserved after the life and due to how much they've served their country. I think those are mistakes that are so humongous to get one's head around. I don't think his ego is going to allow him, at least for now. And like I was saying earlier, I think the universe throws harder and harder obstacles in your way to get you to recognize where you need to change your path. So things are only going to get harder. Things are only going to get worse until he finally sees it. And maybe he never sees it. Maybe it's just that Megan leaves him and he's forced to go back home, because what else will he do in Montecito without her controlling his entire life? So I think that's the part that really that people struggle with, is that why can't he see it? Because it feels so obvious to us, right? It seems so obvious from their dynamic that he is in a very abusive relationship. Again, he has his responsibility in it. I don't think he's just purely a victim. He has taken a lot of decisions in this, but he's obviously suffering from narcissistic abuse.
Yes, it's interesting, having seen it in the people that I interact with, and also many people that I advise through consultation and respond to my videos. I often liken the experience of a victim of the narcissist to essentially being drunk. That at the time, they believe all the decisions that they're making are correct and appropriate, and they completely lose insight into what's really going on. So it's a little bit like when you're out tripping the light fantastic and you've downed quite a lot of alcohol. At the time, you thought it was a really good idea to jump up on the bar, whip off your top, jiggle your boobs around, singing Hi Ho Silver. And then the next day, as you're sobering up, you end up thinking, oh, it's coming back to me. Oh my God, what was I doing? And you turn to a friend and say, why didn't you stop me? And the friend says, we tried to, but you wouldn't listen. You were away. Excuse me. You'd thrown back so much tequila. You were really enjoying yourself, and we couldn't get through to you. And it's similar for the victim of the narcissist, that when they're caught in the manipulation and they are being driven by their own emotional thinking. With Harry, he has entered this awful shared fantasy, as I often refer to it, with this one's wife, whereby he will see instances of her behavior to others where he thinks, that's not on. And there will be instances where he sees the way that she behaves towards. But he lacks the insight to fully, one, understand what it is that he's dealing with, namely a narcissist, and two, he's yet to see the impact that she has, because he still drinks the Kool-Aid. So there will come a point, because it will end disastrously, but there will come a point where he will see, all of a sudden, the scales will fall from his eyes, and he'll think, oh my goodness me, I did that, and what was I thinking? What was I doing? And even for someone who's not that bright, and we know that he has strong narcissistic traits in relation to pride and defiance and resentment, etc., he will see it at a later juncture, but it's some way away from that happening. And many people, as you rightly point out, Baggage, think, surely he must be able to see all of this. He's just an awful human being because he knows what's going on here and he's complicit in it. Well, actually, yes, he's going along with it, but it's almost like he's doing so with some form of impairment. He doesn't truly understand what's actually going on. And therefore, he isn't in full possession of the facts to make a rational response to all of this in the way that somebody on the outside is. So that person on the outside looks at it and goes, that behavior is absolutely reprehensible, and Harry, you ought to be ashamed of it. It's not the case that Harry's thinking, oh, yeah, I'm behaving like a complete bell end here. Screw you. He actually, because of the manipulation and his own emotional thinking, he thinks what he's doing is right. And he thinks it's the two of them against the world to some extent. And
Yes.
one day he will wake up from this, but not right now. And time again, I consult with people who will say, you know, I cut off friends because I thought it was the right thing to do. And afterwards, when I kind of woke up from the fog, I thought, what on earth have I done? And at the time, there are people when they're first being seduced and they think the narcissist is the most amazing person that they've ever met. And then later on, it's like, ugh, what did I ever think in them? What did I ever see in them? Oh God, I've looked at some of my old messages to them. Oof. I can't believe that I was gushing over them. And that's the whole point. It's almost like I turned into somebody else. And that's what happens.
Yes.
When the narcissist gets hold of you, you do turn into somebody else as a combination of being manipulated and your own emotional thinking, so that you take leave of your senses in a way. So that's a good point to make about Harry.
I completely agree with you that, because that's exactly how I felt, by the way. I'm a pretty day to day, I'm a pretty positive person, happy person. I'm a bridge builder. I try to always look at the other side of things. But I turned into this vicious, resentful, paranoid person. Mm-hmm. And it was such a transformation in such a short period that there was a letter I wrote to my father. And I have a great relationship with my father, so it makes no sense to me. I sometimes look back on it, I'm like, what was going on? And I wrote this letter, and I went and put it in the mailbox. And I was sitting and thinking, and last minute I went and I pulled that letter. Something had told me that whatever you've written is not accurate. That's not what you really believe. And my friendships were the weakest they were at that point. Luckily, not so weak that they actually broke. But resentment is one of those weird emotions that I like how you said, being drunk. It's almost like being drunk. And I think resentment is that poison that enters your veins, where the narcissist is telling you that you're this really special person, and that the refusal of your friends or of your family to see that is something you should be so angry about. They sell that vision really well. I mean, they are obviously very sophisticated at this. And that's what I really believed. I felt so hard done by in my whole life. I felt so hard done by in that patch of work time. So, and then it felt like I was waking up from a dream, but I did feel like it took me some time to completely come out of it. There was lingering anger and resentment that poisoned my relationships for some time. Luckily, I didn't do anything that people couldn't brush off and let go, but there was still hatred in my heart for a long time. And I think it took I think a couple of years, and I am the type that when something's bothering me, I obsess over it. And I do think that my dive into all this narcissism content, I mean, I must have gone through at least 30, 40 of your videos in a very short period of time. But because I just became obsessed, it was like, this is what happened? Really? This is the answer? I didn't know. I was kind of walking around blind afterwards. And it does feel very cathartic, but you almost like fill yourself up with more poison, and then finally you can let it go and release it.
Indeed. Now, you touched earlier on, Baggage, about the Sussex squad, and they're well known for their imbecilic, vitriolic attacks on people. Have you had much involvement with them?
No, they come to my channel in very passing modes, and and their favorite thing to say is that I'm jealous of Megan. I find that insult very strange. It's like calling someone a pick-me, or saying that you're brainwashed by the patriarchy, or you have internalized misogyny. Those kind of insults are so weird, because you're not actually arguing the point. you're just trying to nullify the person. You're trying to make the person irrelevant, their voice irrelevant, which is just the silliest thing. It's like, if you have a problem with something I've said, attack that argument and hash it out with information. Don't just say that I have no right to speak because I'm obviously jealous of Megan. But that's been the extent of it. I've pretty much stayed away from them as much as possible, luckily. But their treatment of Catherine is what really gets me. That at a time that she's really sick, and I had received a comment on one of my videos saying, Harry actually looks happy now. Look at William. William is so sad. And I said, William is dealing with the health issues of his father and his wife. Of course he's sad. And the response was, as if these are the first people that have ever suffered from cancer. So it's, again, it's so moronic, right?
Yeah, they're utterly jaundiced, and you make a very fair point about the fact that they always, they regularly trot out the "you're jealous" line, and they actually mean "you're envious," so they can't even get the use of the word correct. And I often think, Baggage, that's as a consequence of often these are just generated by bots, I think, and it's a sort of standard programming just to sort of throw that in. And you're absolutely right that it's an ad hominem attack, which demonstrates there is no substance to their argument. So they've got to play the man, metaphorically speaking, rather than the ball. So, and when you point out to them the evidence, as for instance, you've just done so there about William, you're met with, oh, well, they're the first person in history ever to suffer this. They've nailed their colours to the mast to such an extent that they are, in effect, as a consequence of their stupidity and jaundice, impervious to reason. And therefore, that's why, as you have taken the course, that they're ultimately best avoided. You can perhaps state the point once so that other people see it, but largely the most effective way to deal with them is to ignore them and their idiocy and it just speaks for itself. But I can see and understand that many people feel very strongly with regard to their allegiance towards the royal family, but also just out of a sense of decency, that to comment in the way that they do is just downright unpleasant, and they won't stand for it. Well, you're perfectly entitled to have that stance, and it's a decent one to have. But unfortunately, the proponents of this kind of nonsense are impervious to reason. So it's a case of make your point to them once and then leave it. Don't get drawn into an argument, because it's the usual adage about, if you wrestle with a pig in mud, the problem is the pig enjoys it. And essentially that's what they're doing. They're so stupid. You're never going to change because they're incapable of doing so, because they're incapable of critical thinking, and they've nailed their colours very firmly to a particular mast, and they will die on that hill. So consequently, you're just wasting your brain cells arguing with them. Of course, there are times where it's jolly good sport to give them a prod and provoke them, and that's rather entertaining. But for the most part, it's better to let the sugar dissolve and have nothing more to do with them. Now, you've talked about their attacks on Catherine. Naturally, she's a prominent member of the royal family, Baggage. Do you have a favourite member of the royal family, and if so, who is it?
I would say it's Catherine. I think she is the epitome of grace, of just gentle beauty. And I like how she approached the royal family. She did not know the ropes, and instead of declaring loudly that she planned to hit the ground running, she stayed silent. I think that's one of those pieces of advice that women now reject so vehemently. And even the Queen, had in her lifetime received a lot of criticism for that she was a woman who chose to stay silent and work in the background. And I think that strategy is about working with the long play, the long game. And Catherine could have done what Meghan did, because she did receive a lot of criticism, and a lot of it is unfair. But the problem is that if you are a public figure, you are going to receive criticism, and most of it will be unfair. Some of it will be genuine, some of it will be reasonable. Complaining about it doesn't actually do anything. It increases, in fact, the likelihood that you will receive more. Because what are you doing at the end of the day? You feel like you should control how people think about you and what kind of opinions they have about you. And that's what Megan's been doing for such a long time. And Catherine instead just stayed the course, learned the ropes, followed the rules, tried to understand the culture of the family as much as possible and embrace it properly. And over the years, she has ramped up in her role really well. She didn't come out with a single tear when she was criticized for not working hard enough or for not being a great orator or anything else. She just quietly did her job. And now she is the most celebrated woman in the world. And that is a great example of short-term strategies versus long-term strategies. Megan wanted to come in, control everything, create this victim narrative, and victim narratives burn out. Yes, you'll get a little sympathy in the beginning, and people did when she cried wolf when it came to the racism side. People had sympathy for her because it was not right. But what she could have done is chosen not to look at it and say, here, let me look at the positive. Yes, a couple of people said racist things. There'll always be people who say racist things. You should see the comments I get on my Instagram, DMs. It'll be some of the most silliest racist things. Everybody gets it. She could have chosen to look at the crowd of a mostly white country embracing her with open arms on her wedding day. They were so excited for her. And she could say, I'm so welcome here. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm not going to pay attention to negative things. And the thing is, over time, people would have come to her defense and hidden all those negative things from her, which is what really, that's what adulation really is. When people love you, they want to protect you. They want to lift you up even more because of the impact you have on them. You are lifting them up. They're lifting you up. So I think she never could understand how to do that because she is, there are all these reasons that we don't need to get into here necessarily. Like, she's a narcissist. She doesn't like any criticism. But Catherine is so down to earth and just said, I am here. I'm going to learn. I'm going to grow. And over time, she's just shown. She is the true diamond of the royal family.
Now, there's certainly sound reasons that you've advanced in relation to Catherine's popularity and also what this one's wife ought to have done. But as we know, that could never have happened and would never happen as a consequence of her narcissism. That bit of circuitry is missing. So it is all about the short-term gain for her. So come whatever is necessary to get to those prime aims. And with her, it's the eternal victim and the pity plays. Not all narcissists behave that way. She does as a consequence of her particular classification. And so that's why she did that. And as you rightly pointed out, it becomes old fairly quickly. And she then has the collateral consequence of people saying, oh, not this nonsense again. It wasn't really accurate when you mentioned it the first time around, and come on, grow a pair and move on. I think as well, you point out the fact that Catherine maintained a dignified silence a lot of the time, and she dug in and got on with it. And it shows, as we've seen in relation to her withdrawal as a consequence of the cancer diagnosis, that the world is one because of the immediacy of social media, which won't go into it in too much detail because it's a huge topic in itself as to how that has cultivated a rise in narcissistic behavior. But there is this expectancy of always knowing what people are doing, because nowadays, if you want to tell everybody what you had for lunch, you can put it on your Facebook page. And tedious as it is to see that in your feed, their social media has created this idea that somehow people are now entitled to not only tell the world about what they're doing, whereas for the vast majority of people on this planet, what they do is of no interest to the world, but they think that it is. And secondly, an expectation that they should be allowed to know what other people are doing, that there is this intrusiveness that has been enhanced by the nature of the media, but also social media, that certain people embrace that, so that, if they go to the bathroom, it's suddenly splashed on their Instagram, or look at this thing that I've bought. And I'm talking about famous people who share every breath that they take with their audience, so that it creates amongst people who perhaps aren't able to assess it in a more rational fashion. It creates this overriding atmosphere of, well, I'm allowed to know. You should tell me what you're doing. You're not allowed to be silent. You're public property. And that then creates a more entitled attitude amongst people and erodes those boundaries. And you see that in relation to some of the behaviours that Catherine has had to endure. We should be told what type of cancer she's got. No, you shouldn't. That's a personal matter for her. Where's it written? You should be entitled to that information, but people state that. And it's demonstrative of the way that the world has altered. And social media has a lot to do with that. Now, with that all said, what's your favorite nickname for this one's wife?
I would say the woman. You use that a lot, right? Did you call her the woman?
No, I don't call her the woman. I originally used her name, and then I started calling her Harry's wife, and then I call her this one's wife. But there's various, such as, the Duchess of Delusion, the Duchess of Industrial Beige. So I think it's somebody else that might have called her the woman. Do you like that, do you?
I like that one. I haven't used any of her nicknames, but by the way, to just add to something you said, this is a very unpopular opinion in our very democratic times. Everybody has a right to their voice, but not everybody has the right to be heard. And if, let's say, we were just in a little town of 150 people, the local kook who has crazy conspiracy theories has a right to speak them, but we don't have to listen to that. We don't have to sit in front of him and provide him an audience. Indeed. The problem with social media and the unification of almost 8 billion people on platforms across the board has meant that kooks listen to other kooks and give them perception of power, large audiences, and then they actually embolden each other in their kookery. And this is one thing that people kind of forget, that even America, a derivative of the British perspective on governance, is that we're not a democracy, we're a republic. And that was because there was this belief that popularism wouldn't actually get to good solutions. And that's what we're seeing kind of playing out on the world stage today, is that because 2 million kooks can come together on a social media account and exert all sorts of ruckus overall, they have now power, they have influence, they have the ability to actually cause damage or change, move things, because people have to pay attention to 2 million people willing to work together. And that's what's made so many things just crazy. The fact that you have to justify why a cancer diagnosis shouldn't be shared. I mean, that's outrageous. Why should someone's personal health need to be shared? And
no, it shouldn't. Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's entirely correct that once upon a time, that person with the rather odd views that used to sit in the corner of the pub and mumble about them was left to mumble about them in the corner of the pub, and everybody knew that basically he was the village weirdo and nobody paid any attention to him. And then along came the internet, and he was able to find the next village's weirdo, and the one after that, and the one after that. And as you rightly point out, they've banded together, and their ridiculous views, which aren't founded in anything sensible or based upon evidence, gain some form of traction because they tend to be quite noisy individuals, and they give the impression of being more numerous than they actually are. And the silent majority, who just want to get on with their lives, find those lives being affected and eroded. Views. So I agree with your observations in that respect. So this one's wife was the woman. What about Harry? Any favorite nicknames for our Prince of Pink Pancakes?
I love Has Been. I love that. And what was the other one? I forget. I'm so bad at remembering these, but has been. I'm going to go with
Okay.
that as my fave.
Okay. Jolly good. Now, I want you
I like what
to
you just called him too. What was that?
the Prince of Pink Pancakes. Yes. That's people. At first, people were a little bit, what's he talking about? What does he mean? Well, Prince is obvious.
Mm.
And it's the idea, of course, that this one's wife owns him. So she regularly gets hold of him by the balls and gives them a squeeze and turns them into pancakes. So it's to demonstrate Harry's sort of submissive role in relation to that of his wife. So I call him the Prince of Pink Pancakes, amongst other things. Now, I want you to tickle your imagination for me, please, Baggage. And it's
Mhm.
the sun has set, dusk has arrived in Monty Shit Show. The crickets are chirping outside. It's near the end of another day, and it's bedtime at the Monty Shit Show mansion with its 26,000 flushing toilets. Tell me, what do you see the bedtime routine of this one's wife and Harry looking like? What do you picture?
Honestly, I think that house is completely empty,
Okay.
and the two of them are in separate locations.
Yeah.
She's at her fancy apartment. He's at maybe a hotel room,
Okay.
and they haven't they have a text thread for the next time they're going to pretend to be a couple.
Fair enough. Okay, let's follow that up. So Harry's on his
Mhm.
own in a hotel. What's he doing?
Um, Maybe a touch of the grass is what I would imagine. He's like,
Yep. Okay, so he's rolled a fat one, so he's enjoying a spliff. And what about this one's wife? She's in a fancy apartment, a swanky apartment somewhere. What's she doing when it's getting close to bedtime?
I think she's rage scrolling headlines.
You can picture, you can't you, with just some sleep mask propped up on her forehead and smothering her face in all manner of creams and ointments, or the blood of the Virgin, or something like that, as she attempts to hold on to some vestige of youth, and their face twisted up like some old crone, as you say, rage scrolling. It's an evocative image, isn't it?
Oh,
I think
yes.
I think there's some force in what you're suggesting. Now,
Especially because of Catherine's appearance in that
yeah,
gorgeous purple dress. I mean, what a vision. I think she's looking at, just obsessing over those photos, just angry, just really
yeah,
angry.
yeah. She can't help but want to look at these pictures and what's going on. Her narcissism drives her to do it. More evolved
Mm.
narcissists wouldn't give a fig, wouldn't give a rat's ass about it. But she has
Really?
that, yeah, because they've got fingers in so many other pies that they uh, such things like that. They know, for instance, about the things that are said about them, but they just laugh them off because it's I am this edifice of superiority. These are just mere beetles scuttling around at my feet. I don't need to
Mm.
concern myself with what they're saying. You know, I'm a billionaire. I'm vastly famous. I'm vastly wealthy. I'm successful. All of these various things, and would just have no due regard to it. But someone like this one's wife, even though she's famous and she is wealthy, though it's more infamous these days and that wealth is diminishing, she can't actually be satisfied with those things because her narcissism causes her to want to be loved because she believes that she's a lovable person. So she becomes obsessed and preoccupied with trying to control this narrative of I'm lovable, you should all love me. And of course, the more that she tries to tell us that she's lovable, the more she shows that she's not. And so it becomes this uh, decreasing circle for her. And part of that makes it worse is that the nemesis, as I call Catherine, is repeatedly popular. You only have to look at the two videos that were placed on ESPN's channel. The last time I saw some reference to it, the appearance at the ESPYs in relation to this one's wife and Harry, I think it had something like 256,000 views 3 days ago. Catherine's appearance at Wimbledon was just shy of 1 million in less than a
Wow.
day. I think in about 15 hours. So something like that really
Mm.
infuriates this one's wife, and she's incapable of not being bothered by it. It gets to her because Catherine is what she thinks she should be, and she isn't, and it really gets to her.
Wow.
Yeah. Now,
Uh,
sorry,
Out of
please.
curiosity, I have a quick question for you.
Certainly.
If you came across this one's wife and she was alone and it's just the two of you, there are no cameras, nothing, would you say anything to her?
Yes, I'd say these shoes need a shine. Could you get on with it for me, please? Would I say anything to her? I don't find her a particularly interesting person in herself. She's just a very good tool for me to use in relation to explaining narcissism. In an actual conversation with her, she's fairly banal and doesn't really
Hmm.
have much of interest to say. I think what she would probably do is she'd be flirtatious towards me. And whilst I'm a ruggedly handsome chap, she's like that with any fellow because she believes that all men want to knock her hip out. So it's not necessarily any particular compliment towards me that she would behave that way. I think I would probably be minded to toy with her. I'd perhaps see if I could make her cry. I think that's what I would do.
Hmm.
See if she goes for either throwing herself to the floor or one tear left eye go, or actually breaking down and sobbing under the relentless onslaught of my vitriol. Um,
Boy.
the most satisfying thing to do actually would be to ignore her because that gets to her the most. But I think there's some
Yes.
sport there to toy with her beforehand. May I throw that question back at you? If you were
Yes.
alone with her, what would you speak to her? What would you do?
I think I would just see right through her and just keep
Hmm.
walking. Because
Yeah.
I agree with you. Because as far as she is as a person, you're right. She's completely benign. She has the least interesting things to say in the most roundabout way possible.
Yes.
And I think it would be very satisfactory to just stroll right by her and say, just show that she really is irrelevant. The irrelevancy she's so afraid of.
Yes, walking away from her would be the most effective thing to do. And particularly for somebody such as yourself, who has such a susceptibility to narcissists, even though you can see through her, being in her presence would still be detrimental for an individual such as yourself. So that would be the most effective thing to do, to walk away from her.
Yes, I agree. I think even after all of my learnings, at the end of the day, I still am a people pleaser. I
Yes.
really I really don't like upsetting anybody. And there will be times that someone's just talking my ear off and they think that I'm just the most active listener, kind listener. And my husband will just come by and he'll be like, "Hey, sorry, we got to go.
Hmm.
I'll have to pull her away." And he'll ask me, he's like, "Why are you staying in that conversation? I know you were not enjoying it." I'm like, "I don't know. I just didn't want that person to feel bad." So
Yeah.
he has to actively take me out, which I'm glad he does. So
Yeah, well, that's useful that he assists you in that way. Now, do you think Harry has a guilty pleasure that this one's wife doesn't know about?
Huh. Oh, okay. At the polo,
Hmm.
those strange strokes he was giving Nacho, I'd never really wondered about Harry's secret sexuality until I saw that gesture. It just felt so intimate.
Hmm.
And it seems to me that he has a far closer bond with Nacho that goes beyond just a male friend.
Yes.
And he looks really happy with him. So I wonder if there's a little bit of hanky panky going on there that
Yeah,
Megan would
maybe a
not know about.
bit of a rub down together in the showers after playing polo, that kind of thing. Bit of
Boy.
bit of ginger man love going on. Fair enough. Okay, there's the guilty pleasure. What do you think's the first thing that this one's wife washes in the shower?
Huh. Maybe all that gunk out of her eyes with all the
Hmm.
eyelashes she wears.
Okay. And what does Harry think about when he's on the toilet?
I think I think he seethes about William. As much as I think Megan hates Catherine, I think
Hmm.
Harry probably almost equally hates William.
Interesting. So he has a bit of a rage poo. Well, that's a delightful image to share with our listeners. But thank you for that. Now, it only remains for, as is always the case when it's a conversation with the ultra, for us to have a little game of this or that, where I give you a range of selections. You have a metaphorical gun pointed to your head baggage, so you can't decline to answer. You have to choose one of them. So if you're ready, away we go. Fruit or veg?
Fruit.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
Text or telephone call?
Telephone.
Laptop or tablet?
Tablet.
Driver or passenger?
Driver.
Sapphire or ruby?
Sapphire.
Soft or hard?
Hard.
Dusk or dawn?
Dawn.
Unicorn or dragon?
Dragon.
Fresh linen or fresh coffee?
Fresh linen.
James Bond or Jason Bourne?
James Bond.
Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Oh, that's a tough one. Harry Potter.
Okay. Jam or marmalade?
Jam.
Elf or dwarf?
Elf.
Roses or lilies?
Lilies.
Christian Bale or Hugh Jackman?
Christian Bale.
Titanic or Ghost?
Titanic.
Top Gun or Fast and the Furious?
Top Gun.
Green or blue?
Green.
Tall or short?
Tall.
Spring or fall?
Spring.
Wizard or warrior?
Wizard.
Mountain or beach?
Mountain.
Wasps or bees?
Bees.
Sparkling or still?
Still.
Frasier or Seinfeld?
Frasier.
Said with enthusiasm. Homer or Bart?
Homer.
Dogs or cats?
Cats.
Yeah, I heard somebody making a bid for being heard earlier on. An afternoon with
She's back
Oprah.
now.
Is she? Okay. Afternoon with Oprah or an evening with Ellen?
Oprah.
Okay. Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday.
The book or a film adaptation?
Book.
Prince William or Loose Cannon Louis?
Prince William.
Okay. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, or Princess Anne?
Ooh, that's a tough choice. I would say Sophie.
Okay. Harry or this one's wife?
Harry.
This one's wife or Prince Andrew?
Ooh. Prince Andrew.
Okay. A day with this one's wife doing whatever she wants, or if you can't stomach that, you're not allowed to make a video about her ever again.
A day with her, because then I would make a video about it.
Good answer. Well, thank you very much, Baggage, for your excellent observations about your experiences with narcissism and also about this one's wife. A pleasure to have spoken to you, and I look forward to doing so in the future.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, HG, and thank you for making this content. I really do think you're helping so many people that are just lurking in the dark that you probably never hear from, and I was one of them, so thank you for that.
You're most welcome.